Welcome back to my video series on Akilah Obviously's copyright infringement case against Sargon of Akkad. Let me acknowledge immediately the clickbaity nature of the title of this video, but I honestly do consider what I'm going to lay out in this video to be rather shocking. First, if you haven't watched my previous videos in this series, I highly recommend you do. They go step by step through the case law that I argue makes Sargon's case for fair use and essentially set up the argument I'm going to make in this video. At the very least, watch the previous two videos. They lay out the foundation for whether a work can be considered transformational, which is the crux of this video. Now, before I get to the shocking evidence, we have one more element to explore that is necessary for understanding that evidence. That element is context. As I've repeatedly pointed out in these videos, and the courts have said repeatedly, fair use cases must be judged on a case-by-case basis. This is at least in part because the context matters. In Mattel v. Walking Mountain Productions, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals said, in assessing whether Forsythe's photographs parody Barbie, Mattel urges us to ignore context, both the social context of Forsythe's work and the actual context in which Mattel's copyrighted works are placed in Forsythe's photographs. However, in parody as in news reporting, context is everything. In Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer v. Grokster, the Supreme Court, in determining whether Grokster's actions were unlawful, said, the evidence alone would not justify an inference of unlawful intent, but viewed in the context of the entire record, its import is clear. The unlawful objective is unmistakable. In Castle Rock v. Carroll Publishing, the Second Circuit Court recognized that the second fair use factor may be of less or even no importance when assessed in the context of certain transformative uses, and referencing the Supreme Court's Campbell decision, said that the third factor, the amount and substantiality of the portion of the copyrighted work used, must be examined in context. In this case, Sargon's video has to be taken in the context of his channel, his reputation, the title he placed on the video, etc. The argument Sargon has to make here is that in this context, his intent to criticize Akilah's work, to ridicule it, was obvious regardless of whether he added additional commentary or not. No one looking at the video in this context would come to the conclusion that Sargon's video was merely the facile use of scissors or extracts of the essential parts constituting the chief value of the original work, as just the story put it, but rather that Sargon had chosen those clips to make a point about Akilah and at her expense. You can test this argument out for yourself. Consider for a moment a hypothetical where Akilah puts up another video and Sargon puts up another video as well, referencing Akilah's new video. Without seeing either video or knowing anything other than who created them, could you safely assume that Sargon's video would be a criticism of Akilah's video? Would it be likely that he would hold her ideas up for ridicule? Could you assume that any clips he used from Akilah's video would be for the purpose of making a completely different and contrary argument than Akilah was making in her video? In other words, in the context of Sargon and Akilah, can it reasonably be assumed what the purpose of Sargon's video would be? I would argue the answer to that question is undeniably yes. Here's the thing though. That little experiment was really just for your own personal edification. In this specific case, Sargon doesn't actually have to put any effort into arguing this context. There's evidence that proves it. And the shocking part isn't the evidence itself, but rather the source of the evidence. The evidence is none other than Akilah's own complaint. The text I'm about to read comes directly from Akilah's complaint. I've taken it from various parts of the complaint and reordered it to create a better flow, but the original meaning remains in place. I'll link to Leonard French's site where he has a copy of the full complaint so you can see the quotes in context. That being said, it reads, Benjamin is a controversial content creator and filmmaker who publishes his content online on his YouTube channels. Benjamin self-describes his work as anti-ideological and anti-identitarian, and routinely engages and criticizes viewpoints on various social and political issues. Due to the nature and subject matter and presentation of his content, Benjamin regularly is the subject of media coverage and is publicly known for his provocative style and strongly held beliefs against liberal social and political stances. Defendants, particularly Benjamin, have been habitually outspoken against many of the political positions for which Hughes campaigns and which were included in her election night video. In an attempt to discredit Hughes and her political positions, defendants copied and uploaded Hughes' original content onto the internet. It also notes that Sargon titled his video SJW Levels of Awareness and states, The SJW designation in the title is an abbreviation for Social Justice Warrior, a title routinely used by Benjamin in a demeaning context to belittle opponents of perceived liberal social policies and stances. Akilah's complaint literally says that Sargon uploaded the video for the purpose of discrediting her and her political positions, which in this context is synonymous with saying for the purpose of criticizing and ridiculing her. She points to the title and states that it identifies the video as being meant to demean and belittle her, which again in this context is synonymous with criticizing and ridiculing her. She points out that he routinely engages in criticism of people like her, and this time she actually uses the word criticizes. And finally, that he has been the subject of media coverage and is publicly known for doing so. The question of whether or not Sargon's video was criticism or parody is over, because Akilah's complaint identifies it as such and says it is publicly known that this is the purpose of his videos. Even if you want to attempt to try and make some convoluted argument that in this context the words discredit, demean, and belittle in Akilah's original complaint are not legally synonymous with the words criticize or ridicule, you have to acknowledge that the purpose of discrediting, demeaning, and belittling her is a completely different message and meaning than the message and meaning that Akilah had in her original video. There is no way anyone could argue that in Akilah's original video, she was trying to discredit, demean, and belittle herself and her own political views. So in the end, it doesn't matter whether you or I or anyone else believes that Sargon's video is criticism of Akilah, or at the very least transforms the message and meaning of her original video. Akilah believes it to be true as stated explicitly in her complaint. So in the context of this case, that question has been settled. Given this and the arguments that I laid out in all the other videos which already favored Sargon and are further bolstered when we accept that this was criticism, I believe Sargon has an undeniable fair use defense in this case. I am of course not an attorney, so this is just my take on everything. However, when comparing this case to other recent cases, and specifically cases in the Second Circuit where this was filed, I believe that courts would agree with me on this. Also, if they did, you would kind of have to admire the hilarious and ironic poetic justice of it all. Sargon's video ends with Akilah saying this.
I think what's helpful for me is I live in New York. I'm surrounded by like-minded people. People here are disgusted. And we're not going to take it.
Later, in a tweet to Akilah, Sargon says that you can't recognize that this is satire as part of the joke. And then, as if to prove Sargon's point, Akilah files a complaint, presumably written by a New York lawyer, that as Akilah points out things just like her, and in that complaint, they are so single-minded in their way of looking at things and incapable of seeing the situation from any other perspective that they literally provide Sargon with all the evidence he needs to prove his case. And not just this evidence, but as I've shown throughout my video, evidence for practically every factor of fair use. Ladies and gentlemen, if that isn't evidence that they are living in a bubble, I really don't know what is. But obviously that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I really want to know if you find my arguments compelling and specifically if they changed your mind. Also, if they didn't change your mind, then I'd like to know what you think I missed. And if you could cite some case law supporting your position, that would be a plus. And of course, as I've said in my previous videos, this is a brand new channel, and that means these videos making the legal case for Sargon aren't going to show up in anybody's feed. Obviously, Sargon can't comment on this case too much for legal reasons, and there's a lot of bad information out there that's damaging his reputation. If you think I made a good argument and want to help spread the word, click the subscribe button and share these videos on social media. Thanks for all your help.